What's going on, guys? This is Tower number 9. This is a pre-recorded game of Star Wars Unlimited. Don't worry about the camera skew. I do correct that. Yeah, there we go. And this is myself playing Sabine Wren Cunning versus a Command Luke deck. And so Sabine is a very aggressive leader, and her leader ability deals 1 damage to both bases. You exhaust to deal 1 damage to both bases, and she deploys faster than any other leader, deploying at 4 resources. And her stats are not great. She's only 2/5, which is quite weak for a leader unit, but when she attacks, she deals 1 extra damage to the enemy base. So very aggro leader, and my game plan here is to try to be aggressive. We see in my early resourcing, I'm going to resource a Rebel Pathfinder and an Asteroid Sanctuary. So Asteroid Sanctuary is often a card that you're going to be wanting to get big value on later in the game. Even though it's only a 2 cost, it's often best when you're exhausting a big enemy unit. And Rebel Pathfinder, I simply had 2 copies. So that's kind of the resourcing decision there. I still have a copy in hand, and I'm probably not going to want to play more than one. My opponent leads off with R2. I play the Rebel Pathfinder. My opponent uses Luke's ability to put a shield on R2, and I'm going to use Sabine's ability to deal 1 damage to each base. Arguably, I should have just taken the initiative here. But my thinking behind that was that I really want to try and do as much damage as possible before my opponent can get Luke Skywalker onto the board. Luke is a really strong unit, but this Luke command deck is going to be a little slower, and my hope is that I can overwhelm him early on, and doing that extra damage to the base seems like it might be helpful. It does leave me a little open to like a Fleet Lieutenant play to have R2 quickly kill the Pathfinder. Luckily, my opponent doesn't have it, just swings R2 into the base for 1. I play a Wing Leader, one of my favorite units. 3 cost 2/1. When played, give 2 experience to another friendly Rebel unit. So 2 experience there to the Rebel Pathfinder, putting him up to a 2/3 base +2/+2. So it's going to be a 4/5. And that Saboteur ability means that when he attacks a unit that has shields, the shields are defeated before any damage is dealt. So with this buff, my Pathfinder can actually attack R2 and defeat him in one go. My opponent here plays C3PO and draws a card. So C3PO and R2D2 work very well together. So R2D2 allows you to look at your top card when played or on attack, and you can choose to put it on top or bottom. And then C3PO has you guess a value, and then if the top card is that value, you can draw it. So if you know what the top card value is from R2D2, you can make a very informed guess with C3PO and get a fairly reliable card draw. Alternatively, R2D2 might show a card that you don't want. You could send it to the bottom and then have C3PO guess more randomly. In this situation, I decide that I'm going to have my Pathfinder take down R2D2 rather than going for the base. The reason for this is that I don't want my opponent to have the C3PO R2D2 combo. And it seems like potentially good value to do this also because I'm knocking down, I'm piercing that shield and removing R2 more efficiently. My opponent then is going to put another shield on C3PO himself, and I'm going to use Sabine's ability for 1 damage to both bases. There has been some discussion of maybe you don't want to do this if you have the opportunity to take the initiative, but in this situation, I could be wrong, but my reasoning is just that I want to get more damage onto the enemy base. And my goal is really to try and close out the game before Luke can come out and do a ton of damage. I don't know if I can actually win before Luke deploys, but my hope is that I can do enough. So my opponent plays a Fleet Lieutenant to send C3PO into the Rebel Pathfinder, inflicting 3 damage. That knocks him down to only 1 life remaining, but he's still alive thanks to those experience tokens. And I have General Dodonna now, so a 4 cost 4/4 who gives friendly rebel units +1/+1. Both the Pathfinder and the Wing Leader are rebel units, so the Pathfinder is in a pretty good spot, as is the Wing Leader. I use Sabine's ability for another 1 damage to each player's base, and I hit the enemy base for 3 with the Wing Leader there. Would be 2, but has +1 from General Dodonna. I'm going to deploy Sabine Wren as a unit. And Sabine is a 2/5, but gets +1 from Dodonna, and her ability does an additional 1, so that's 4 more damage. And then I'll do 5 damage with the attack from the Pathfinder, which is 2 base, +2 for the experience tokens, +1 for Dodonna. And so my opponent's now at half life, and I have a stronger board here. And I'm hoping that I can use this window of advantage while Sabine is on the field, but Luke is not yet deployed to try and push damage onto the enemy base and close things out. I could have attacked the enemy shielded fleet lieutenant with my Pathfinder, and it would have been a trade because Saboteur would have pierced the shield. However, I didn't think it was worth it. So yeah, Sabine 2/5 on attack, deal 1 damage to each enemy base. Not the best stats for a leader, but deploying her this early does give a big advantage. Now my opponent plays a Vanquish, defeating my General Dodonna. And this is actually a good opportunity for me. I was thinking that there was a good chance that my opponent would send C3PO to defeat the Rebel Pathfinder, but because he didn't do that, oh, you know what? He would have had to use, I'm sorry, he would have actually had to use the fleet lieutenant instead, which makes it a little less good because the Pathfinder had +1 life from Dodonna. So in this situation, I hit the enemy base for 5 or for 4 because Dodonna has been removed. Now my opponent can trade C3PO for the Pathfinder because the Pathfinder no longer has 1 extra life from Dodonna being in play. And now this is an interesting situation here, but one that I think quite favors me. I decide I'm going to play another copy of General Dodonna. My opponent doesn't have resources because that Vanquish, which is just defeat a non-leader unit, cost 5. And now I can swing in with Sabine for another 4 damage, and I can swing in with the Wing Leader for another 3 damage, and my opponent is left at only 4 life. And so this is a really good situation for me, especially because I have a copy of Surprise Strike in hand. So all the units that I have on the board are threatening immediate lethal. And this is a very good position to be in. I've managed to do enough damage to the enemy base early on that there isn't a ton of options for the opponent. Maybe the best thing he could do would maybe be to play a Vigilance or something and kill one of my units. You know, maybe play Vigilance, kill Sabine, and heal for 5. But even then, I think that Dodonna and the Wing Leader are able to clear the base and win. Once you get to these low life totals in this game, it can be very dangerous, especially if the opponent has presence in both arenas. Yep, and my opponent sees that and concedes. So, yeah, this was a strong example of Sabine doing what she does best, getting that aggro in there and winning before Luke Skywalker could even deploy. Um, yeah, so that's just a little illustration of the potential power of aggro in Star Wars Unlimited. Hope you guys enjoyed watching that, and I'll be back later with some other Star Wars Unlimited content.